The movie begins with old footage of Sarah Connor revealing her very compelling visions that suggest the world would end in a few years. The agents interrogating her ask how she's so sure of all this, but it only upsets her even more before the scene suddenly changes. The movie takes us to the future, where it's implied that Sarah somehow managed to save the world. It's 1998, and she appears to be living peacefully with her son John on a beach in Guatemala. Unfortunately, this seemingly perfect life is taken away when a T-800 Terminator suddenly appears. The robot pulls out his gun and shoots John without provocation, and although Sarah tries to shoot it down with her own gun, her efforts are futile, as the robot's body is practically impenetrable. John bleeds to death on the floor, and as his devastated mother watches on, the Terminator disappears the same way he came. 22 years after this tragedy, we see a young couple hanging out at night in the city. Their romantic night is interrupted when a massive power surge drops a woman from the sky to the bottom of a bridge. They see this strange event and try to rescue the mysterious lady, but that's when the cops decide to show up, believing that the kids intoxicated the woman. Before they can arrest the couple, the unconscious lady wakes up and knocks out all the cops. It turns out that she's actually an advanced soldier from the future who's been sent back to save someone. After dealing with the officers, this soldier, named Grace, tells the boy to give him her clothes, and then drives off to complete her mission at all costs. Elsewhere, we see the person Grace has been sent back from 22 years in the future to protect. Her name is Dani Ramos, and she's the breadwinner of her family. At home, she wakes up her brother and reminds her father to see the doctor, implying that she's the only one who keeps things running in the house. As she leaves the house with her brother, we finally see the thing that Grace wants to protect Dani from. It's a Rev 9 Terminator that drops out of the sky with the same surge of energy, and it lands specifically in Dani's neighborhood. Thankfully, she's already on the bus to the automobile assembly factory where she works with her brother Diego. At work, Diego is shocked to see that a robot has taken his place in the assembly plant, so he pleads with the supervisor to work out a solution. However, while that's happening, their father suddenly appears at the plant, but we quickly realize that it's actually the Rev 9 Terminator in disguise. Sure enough, he's here to kill Dani, and as he discreetly materializes a weapon from his hand, Grace arrives at the scene just in time to shoot him down and save the target. Grace tries to run away with the siblings, but as you'd expect, it's never that easy to escape from a Terminator. The Rev 9 quickly gets back up, and after fixing the damage he suffered, he splits himself into two to pursue the target. The Terminator quickly catches up to them, so Grace is forced to fight him off again. They manage to get in the car and try to escape again, but the Rev 9 just rips their tires apart. As the fight goes on, Diego gets fatally wounded, and as he slowly dies in the car, he begs Grace to take care of his sister. With the car practically useless to them, the ladies are exposed, and the Terminator advances toward them in his terrifying robot forms, determined to complete his mission. Just when it looks like he has the girls in his sights, Sarah suddenly appears and uses explosives to slow down the two split Terminators. This gives Dani and Grace enough time to get in the truck so they can escape. At this point, Dani feels devastated and just wants to go home, but Grace informs her that she can't do that, especially since her father has already been killed by the Terminator. They soon discover that Grace has been stabbed, so they rush down to a pharmacy to get medical attention. Unfortunately, not long after walking into the place, Grace passes out, and this is when Sarah catches up with them. She helps carry the unconscious soldier, and then takes them to a safe hotel where they can rest. There, Sarah reveals that she's wanted in 50 states, but Dani is too distraught to even focus on anything. She mourns her dead brother, crying because of the way he died, and feeling that he wouldn't even get an honorable burial. Meanwhile, Grace remains unconscious, and in her sleep, she dreams of a war, which appears to be her own future. In this dream, she and the other soldiers are fighting against deadly Rev 7 Terminators, but as the battle rages on, she gets stabbed and dies. Grace wakes up from the dream and disarms Sarah, who was pointing a gun at her. The soldier holds Sarah at gunpoint, so she reveals that years after her son died, she discovered that more Terminators started to appear all over the world. She also informs them that she's found a way to find the killer robots immediately after they arrive, even though they're in different timelines. Because of this, she's able to kill the Terminators before they can even become a threat to the people, but unfortunately she couldn't help Danny this time. At this point, Grace chimes in and reveals that both Skynet and John Connor don't exist in her future. This implies that Sarah successfully destroyed Skynet, but the old lady reveals that there's a new problem that threatens the existence of mankind. Sarah tells them that the world is in danger because of a powerful AI known as Legion. It was originally created because of war, but somehow the bad people at the top turned it into a replacement for Skynet. The trio continues their journey to get away from the Rev 9 Terminator, and on their way to the US-Mexico border where the source of the messages is, but while they're at it, the killer robot tracks them down relentlessly by killing guards and hacking into a surveillance system. After barely escaping from the Rev 9 once again, the women ride a train, and that's when Danny asks Grace about her past. The soldier relives the memories and reveals that it only took 3 days for the world to erupt in war after the plan to stop Legion failed. A while later, they arrive at their next stop, a quiet house in the woods, which also happens to be the home of the T-800 that killed John many years ago. Sarah tries to kill him, but Grace stops her from doing so. In a surprising twist, this old robot now even has a human family, with adopted kids, of course. He reveals that after Skynet was destroyed, he and the other T-800s became useless, and as such, they roamed the Earth aimlessly. However, he started learning to be more human, and even developed social skills as well as a conscience, which allowed him to start a family of his own. The T-800, who now goes by the name Carl, introduces the girls to his beautiful family and even offers them food. He admits that he feels bad about killing John, even though it was his mission, and as Sarah continues to point out how miserable he made her, he offers to redeem himself by joining them in their fight against the Rev 9. Not surprisingly, Sarah kicks against that sort of collaboration, and honestly, you can't blame her for not wanting to work with her son's murderer. However, Grace reminds her that it's for the greater good, especially since it's the only way to guarantee that Danny doesn't get killed. Carl promises to protect Danny with his life when he joins them, and that's when they all get on board with the plan. He shows them his room full of weapons, and even teaches Danny how to shoot. Not long after, they decide that it's time to leave again, so Carl says goodbye to his family and tells them to leave the house. Sure enough, the Rev 9 arrives at Carl's house after that, but when he gets there, the place is already deserted. Meanwhile, Sarah and the others are on their way to find a military-grade electromagnetic pulse, which is one of the few weapons powerful enough to destroy a Terminator. They eventually get this weapon from Sarah's old friend, a major in the military, but before they can set off with the cargo, the Rev 9 arrives at the scene in a stolen police helicopter. Another brutal gunfight ensues, and the major even calls for backup after getting shot. Even at that, the Terminator is still too deadly, so the group eventually escapes in a stolen plane. Unfortunately, as a result of the rush, the precious EMP they struggled so hard to acquire falls out of the aircraft. With no other choice, the group continues the journey on the plane, and that's when Grace reveals why the Rev 9 is targeting Danny so relentlessly. It turns out that Danny would become the founding commander of the resistance that destroys the Legion. In another shocking twist, Grace reveals that the person who saved her after Judgment Day was Danny. In this future, which is also Grace's past, Danny raises her and recruits her as a soldier in the war against the Legion. Danny was such a brave leader that she rallied the hopeless scavengers of the ruined world and turned them into a strong army dedicated to destroying the evil AI. While Grace is revealing all of this, the Rev 9 returns and somehow manages to get on the plane. He quickly attacks Carl, which allows the girls to escape with parachutes as the plane starts to blow up. They land in the river, close to a hydroelectric power plant. There, Carl manages to fight off the Rev 9 and joins the others inside the plant. Unfortunately, just as you might have guessed, the Terminator recovers and tracks them down once more. Inside the place, they come up with a plan to destroy the Rev-9 for good, suggesting a massive explosion would do the trick. The group manages to force the Terminator into a spinning turbine, and a devastating explosion follows, which leaves Carl and Grace fatally injured. Just when you think their sacrifice was enough, the damaged Terminator leaps out from the flames and manages to injure Sarah badly. Even though it looks like it's already dead, it still advances toward Danny, who's currently the last one standing. Knowing that she can't fight the Terminator by herself, she begs Grace to help her, so the soldier urges her to take out her power source. Unfortunately, Danny is still not strong enough, so the Rev-9 overpowers her. Just when it's about to kill her, a partially recovered Carl attacks it and saves Danny. He holds off the Rev-9 long enough for Danny to stab it in the eye with Grace's power source. This, in turn, implants a bomb in its head, and just before it explodes, Carl grabs the Rev-9 and jumps into the air, where they both die in the insane explosion. Years later, Danny and Sarah are secretly watching a young Grace as she plays with her family at a playground. Danny reveals that she doesn't want Grace to go through what she suffered again, so Sarah tells her that it's time for her to get ready, suggesting that Danny is about to be molded into the leader of the resistance that fights the Legion.